Hi, I'm Deborah Viglione, and I am bringing you some educational information on COVID-19, hoping that it will help you navigate the next few weeks and months, hopefully not. Anyway, I'm going to I prepared a slideshow for you, and I'm going to get into that, and I'm really hoping that this information will be helpful. As it's purely for educational purposes, it is not for any other use. Okay, so I'm calling this COVID-19 Review of Nutritional Therapies. Okay, the objective is to educate you about the COVID-19 virus, how it works, and about various nutritional products that may or may not help you in your health journey. Now, none of these products mentioned are intended to cure, mitigate, prevent disease. And none of the products have been studied or proven to affect the COVID-19 virus unless I say otherwise. And there's no cure at this time for the COVID-19 virus. And I'm not going to get into drug therapy. I may mention it in a couple places, but that's not the purpose of this video. So who am I? I am board certified in internal medicine. I'm also board certified in anti-aging regenerative medicine. I have an internal medicine practice in Gulf Breeze, Florida. I have over 30 years of experience practicing internal medicine and actually critical care medicine in the early years. In the last 20 years or so, I've focused more on integrative medicine, functional anti-aging medicine. I do use pharmaceuticals, but I try to incorporate natural therapies as much as possible to help people on their health journey. And I am considerably knowledgeable on health-related therapies and natural therapies. I have spent a good deal of this weekend preparing for this. I've done an exhaustive review of everything that I'm going to talk about. Now, I'm sure I left some products out there. I finally got just brain exhaustion. I couldn't look at anything more, but I think I'm bringing some useful information to you to help you in your decisions that you make for your health and your loved ones. I say COVID-19 is also known as SARS-CoV-2, and you can see these little lovely spikes that come off of it. It got its name apparently from corona, which I guess Latin has something to do with the sun, because in an eclipse of the sun, where the moon's sitting on the sun at a total eclipse, you see these little flares that come off of it. It's actually kind of pretty. The coronavirus family is responsible for 30% maybe of upper respiratory infections, particularly the common cold, and it typically causes mild respiratory symptoms. But what's happened in the last decade is we've seen some mutant viruses that have been very severe and potentially lethal strains. The first was the SARS pandemic in the early 2000s, and next was the MERS, the Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome. The SARS pandemic lasted about 9 months, greater than 8,000 were infected, and there was a 10% fatality. The MERS was much more fatal with a rate of 35%, although not as many people were infected, and it seems to have been isolated to the Arabian Peninsula. This is showing the worldwide distribution at the time of this video of the COVID-19. This is March data. It was first reported in Wuhan, China in 2019, but now people are really wondering if they had some of these symptoms. So I've heard people with identical presentations now that occurred to up to even a year ago. It spread very fast, and the World Health Association in February of 11, 2020 named it a novel COVID-19 virus. And you can see the areas that are very heavily hit, Italy and China being one of them, but you can see now that the southern hemisphere is also being affected. Okay, it's an RNA virus. Most viruses are DNA. It's one strand of RNA. And basically, a virus is not a living thing. It has to have a host to live in, and it uses the host to replicate and, quote, live. But outside of it, it will die, and that's why we have various antiseptics and things that can kill it on surfaces. So it can't live too long without a host. Now, the spike protein is where it actually attaches to our cells, and it attaches through what they call the ACE2, angiotensin converting enzyme receptor. And we're going to go into that more. Okay, so it enters the cell through that receptor, and then it uses an enzyme called mTOR to replicate. Now, mTOR is what the body uses to basically build things, to grow, to repair. And it is a very necessary enzyme, particularly in our younger years as we're growing. However, as we get older, we can get overactivation of that, and it actually is not good. So there have been longevity studies showing that bringing mTOR down increases longevity. Then after it uses the mTOR enzyme, the host will initiate an immune response against the virus, and that becomes a double-edged sword, as we'll see as we talk more. Then the virus actually attacks the cells in the lower lung, and that's why we get viral pneumonia. And it depletes the cells of nitric oxide, which causes endothelial dysfunction, which lines our blood vessels, that then causes some cardiac problems. It also increases an enzyme called PLA2, which we'll go into more. And the critical illness and death is actually caused by acute respiratory distress syndrome, which is caused by what they call a cytokine storm. Now, our body's overreacting with the immune system, and I'll talk to you about more, but all this results in a huge, huge oxidative stress load, and I will go into that next. So basically what you're having is viral pneumonia, which can progress into severe respiratory distress syndrome. You can have a direct cardiac injury, myocarditis, or fluid around the heart. Some people are presenting with gastrointestinal symptoms and diarrhea. It can affect the nervous system, kidney, and it can also cause multi-organ system failure. The end result on your cells is a huge increase of free radicals. And when your free radicals accumulate to the point that the body can't keep up with it, that is what we call oxidative stress. And a lot of the lung tissue damage is due to the oxidative stress, the free radicals that are in there releasing more cytokines, more inflammation, more damage. And you essentially get just a water buildup so that the oxygen can't get through to the cells. You also deplete the cells of NAD, which is critical for energy, and we'll talk about that. Depletes nitric oxide, and all this oxidative stress is killing our mitochondria. Mitochondria are how the how the cell functions with energy. It produces 90% of the energy. So to fight this virus, you've got to have healthy mitochondria. So the objectives of this educational seminar are, it's education only. I don't represent any one product here. Ideally, you want to be strong and healthy before you're ever exposed to the virus. So you want to have a healthy lifestyle all the time. So if you haven't incorporated that into your life, now's the time. So good dietary habits, getting plenty of sleep, moderate exercise, and for Pete's sake, you got to get sugar out of your life. Okay, you want to prevent the viral entry into your body. Ideally, if the virus, you are exposed, you want to minimize its effect. You want to prevent it from replicating. You want to control your immune response. You want to have a good immune response, not an overactive one. And you want to alleviate the oxidative stress and the tissue damage that's going on. And of course, you'd like to relieve your symptoms. So I'm just going to put this in here, just a little tidbit. For those of you who are poor methylators, MTHFR, I have a Facebook group on that. I'm one of them. But our immune systems are compromised from the get-go. And that is because we can't get B12 and folate into the space, the immune system space, without it being methylated. And we have genetic problems that we don't methylate as well. So the treatment to keep our immune system strong is methylated B12 and L-methylfolate. So please don't get slack, you poor methylators. You need to be on your supplementation. Okay, so we're going to start with vitamin C, ascorbic acid. It's probably because it's the most known and most studied antiviral nutrient. And most of the studies with these viruses I have listed here were done in high doses of intravenous vitamin C. There is some protective effect with oral, but you're limited as how much you can get into the body. And the mechanism of actions of vitamin C is when you give it high dose, you can get much higher levels, IV, and then it becomes an oxidant. It actually turns into hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide is the main mechanism our body's white cells use to kill viruses, fungus, and bacteria. So it's actually a direct killer of viruses. It also helps in the production and maturation of T cells. T cells are a type of white blood cell that actually fight viruses. It also helps in the manufacture of natural killer cells, which are particularly strong against tumors and viruses. And it helps stabilize this other factor. You don't need to really learn it, but it helps prevent transmission of the virus. And it helps nitric oxide inhibit production of a major inflammatory marker called NLRP3, major inflammasome. You'll see that again later. So these are a number of things that vitamin C does, and it's not exhaustive, but these are the main ones I wanted to talk about. Now, vitamin D is probably the next most important nutrient studied in viruses, and there are loads and loads of things that vitamin D does, but I wanted to just concentrate on these. First of all, it activates genes that help keep our tight junctions in our gut tight. That is our first line of defense. It is a one cell layer thick barrier that's in our gut, our respiratory system, and our urinary tract. If you don't have these things tight or leaky, then the virus can get in. So you want to keep them tight. It also stimulates antimicrobial peptides, which have direct killing effect on viruses. Also, it helps it's integral in making the white cells being able to make hydrogen peroxide, which is what is killing the virus as well. It has direct effects on T and B cell functions. And this is the biggest thing where I think vitamin T can play in here with this COVID-19 is it prevents overactivation of the immune system. It will help prevent that cytokine storm, and there's multiple ways in which vitamin D does that. It helps prevent autoimmunity. And the interesting thing, it also binds to the ACE receptor and may help prevent lung tissue damage. There's only one negative study about vitamin D, and it had something to do with maybe increasing interleukin-1 beta, which is an inflammatory cytokine. But based on everything I read, the benefits far outweigh any risk. Lactoferrin was an interesting discovery. It's long been known for its effect in the immune system. It's in breast milk, which is one of the ways the mother gives immunity to the baby. But they actually studied it in the SARS, and it was highly upregulated in people that had SARS. So the body was trying to fight it by making more lactoferrin. And in another study in the SARS 2003, they found that it helped prevent the coronavirus from entering cells. It has not been studied yet in the COVID-19. Now, this is really interesting. Zinc has long been known to help the immune system and help find off upper respiratory infections, but it has to be in the cell. And so it has to be intracellular. It's been known to help in HIV, H1N1, the swine flu, coronaviruses. It was helpful in SARS, HPV, and the herpes virus. Now, you have to get it in the cell. Quercetin is a natural product called an ionophore, which takes zinc into the cell. Interestingly, hydroxychloroquine, one of the drugs they're studying to treat this, one of the mechanisms of action for that is it's an ionophore, and it actually puts zinc into the cell. The forms of zinc that seem to be most absorbed are zinc citrate, gluconate, or piconolate, approximately 30 milligrams. Most supplements are ranging from 15 to 60 milligrams, so I wouldn't go over 60. Quercetin, you're going to see keep popping up. It has incredible anti-inflammatory effects, especially in the lungs. And then Rutin and Hespiridn are also anti-inflammatory, and you frequently find them combined with quercetin in products. Selenium is not so much in any kind of treatment for viruses, but they have found that people that are selenium depleted with ARDS and ICU patients, that they actually have a poorer prognosis. So this is one thing you want to make sure you're getting adequate in your diet, and you may even want to supplement to make sure that you're not selenium deficient. Okay, now we're talking about the tight junctions again. Lactobacillus and Bifidobacterium are good bacteria that are necessary to keep those tight junctions intact in the gut. They also have shown individual antiviral immune activity in shortening the duration of influenza, and they activate macrophages, which are immune cells in the intestinal lining. I've told people for years that you need to be on a probiotic. Everybody does, to maintain a good state of health in this toxic environment that we live in. Beta-glucans are products from brewer's yeast, and they have immunomodulatory effects. They decrease cytokines. And we're going to talk more about cytokines, but you heard about the cytokine storm. TNF-alpha is one of the major, strong cytokines. These ILs mean interleukins. There's 4, 6, 1 beta. There's a lot of them. 6 is one of the most inflammatory ones. And beta-glucan also increased interferon gamma, which helps fight immune system or helps fight viruses, and it increased nitric oxide in swine and flu infected pigs. And you frequently find beta-glucans in combination with other products such as probiotics. Okay, now this is a really, really big one. Our body has a pathway inside our bodies that help us deal with free radical formation or reactive oxidative species. We would not be alive without this pathway in our body. And it is much more powerful than taking direct antioxidants such as vitamin C or vitamin E. It reduces oxidative stress. And these are just some of the functions of Nrf2. It activates more than 500 cytoprotective genes. Those are good genes in our body that help keep us alive. And here's a big one. It reduces mTOR activity. Remember, mTOR is one of the first things that virus does to replicate. It has major anti-inflammatory activity. It promotes mitochondrial biogenesis, which just means making more of them. And it improves their function so that they're healthier. It also promotes autophagy, which is removal of waste from the cell. And remember, all that junk that's accumulating because of oxidative stress in the lung, it's going to help with autophagy to remove that. It also increases glutathione, which is a major antioxidant. Now, Nrf2 activation is a bit complicated, and some supplements are more powerful than others in the way that they do this. There is a clinically proven Nrf2 herbal blend that has multiple scientific studies on it, and you can look for that. Okay, now this is an interesting one. Nicotine adenine dinucleotide, also called NAD, is a critical enzyme in every cell. It is required for energy. Literally, we would die within seconds without NAD. NAD declines as we age. In fact, when you get to be about 80, you've lost about 98% of your body's ability to make NAD. That may be one of the reasons that the elderly are more affected by this virus. But the big thing is NAD is necessary for production and activation of these sirtuin genes, particularly SIRT1. SIRT1, in this case, is blocking the action of mTOR by two mechanisms. So you want enough NAD to make enough SIRT1 to then block that mTOR. And that would help with viral replication. So increasing NAD is a good option. However, there is one caveat that NAD, one of the ways our body fights the virus is to deplete NAD in the viral affected cells, and thus causing the cell to die. And then, of course, when the cell dies, you've got more inflammation. So basically, it's kind of like cancer. Do you want to feed the cancer, keep your own cells healthy? If you want to feed the cancer cells, you have to keep your own cells healthy. So if you don't have an adequate NAD supply, you're not going to do very well. So I am a proponent of using an NAD supplement, and there are several out there. I have a good video on YouTube on NAD, the Fountain of Youth, if you'd like to learn more about that. Okay, now here's something that is so commonly used because it's so effective with influenza. However, again, that double-edged sword. There have been some reports that it's actually increasing too much of TNF-alpha and interleukin-6, which is contributing to that cytokine storm and more lung inflammation. So it's generally being cautioned to not use it. It might be helpful as a preventive, but once you start having lung symptoms, it actually may worsen the condition. Because people with high interleukin-6s in the ICUs, they have found have a worse prognosis. Now, interesting though, a good deal of people now are reporting that they have influenza and COVID-19 at the same time. So what do you do? Elderberry, no elderberry? That's a decision you guys are going to have to make individually. Now I just threw some of these other supplements in here because garlic has long been known for its increased immunity, helping you get over respiratory infections, and these are some of the ways it does it. Shitake mushroom and some other mushrooms have great immune boosting actions. You can see there's so many things that the shiitake mushroom does, but neither garlic or shiitake mushroom has been studied directly in coronaviruses that I could find. Green tea, particularly the EGCG extracts from green tea, are free radical scavengers. They have individual antioxidant bacteria, antioxidant activity. They're also antibacterial, fungal, and viral. And there are studies showing its effect against influenza, HIV-1, EBV, Epstein-Barr virus that causes mononucleosis, and bovine coronavirus. And they also studied it with SARS, and it had activity against this 3-CL protease that was important in viral replication. but it was more the extracts, not just the green tea as a whole molecule. But I can't see that drinking green tea would hurt you, but you would probably want to get more of the more powerful extracts. Okay, now this is a little complicated, but we're going to go into that because this is some unique things that I found about the COVID virus. Basically, you start this phospholipase A2 is basically lecithin, and then what happens is this enzyme PLA2, COVID virus makes a ton of that, and what it cleaves is that into arachidonic acid and eventually and another lipid, but those are very, very inflammatory lipids. They're causing damage to the lung tissue, and it's also with that COX. You'll hear COX-2 inhibitors. We're going to talk about NSAIDs a little bit, but it causes massive free radical production, reactive oxygen species in the lungs. So that's increasing your oxidative stress. The mitochondria get dysfunctional. The NAD gets depleted. Your glutathione goes down. It's huge. This enzyme does a lot of bad stuff. Okay, so I kind of went through all that. So it's increasing viral replication as well. So are there any natural inhibitors of that? Yes, I did find some. CDP-choline, not phosphatidylcholine. In fact, phosphatidylcholine is actually one of the inflammatory markers. You don't want that. CDP-choline is available. It's generally used for improved cognition. Quercetin, here we go. Quercetin again is an LP-PLA or a PLA inhibitor. Oh, let's go back. Curcumin, which comes from turmeric, ginkgo biloba, and the Centella azeatia. I don't know how you say it. That's from Gotu Kola, and I'll talk about later. And these are things you might want to consider. These would not be in the preventive realm, but once you started having respiratory symptoms, these might be helpful. Bromelain, I love this. It comes from pineapple, and it's been very anti-inflammatory. One of the things at the end of that phospholipid pathway that I was showing you is massive prostaglandins. Now, prostaglandins can be pro-inflammatory or anti-inflammatory, and bromelain apparently balances the two, which is wonderful, and it's not working on the COX pathway. You've probably heard in the news recently them not recommending people taking NSAIDs. That is not an official recommendation yet, but they're concerned. Apparently, some of the autopsies showed people had a high incidence of NSAIDs like ibuprofen in their system. There's some theories that it may be weakening the immune system a little bit by being on one, or you may not catch it as early. It's really kind of unknown, but the recommendation right now is discuss that with your physician. Don't go off of medication unless your physician tells you to do that. Anyway, when you combine this bromelain with, I can't say it, but the Gotu Kola extract, it had a 70% inhibition of the PLA2, and then combined with diosgenin, which comes from wild yam, there was a 90% inhibition of PLA2. And this is often combined with quercetin and some of the other products. So you can see bromelain quercetin sounds like a really good thing to do to reduce inflammation. Okay, so melatonin, interesting. That is what our pineal gland makes to help us sleep at night. And it targets that inflammasome that we talked about early directly. And it's limited damage from sepsis in animal models. It's also reduced damage from lung injury and ARDS, or people that had ARDS and had mechanical ventilation. Let's see, this is me using this Apple computer. It also helps with immune balance and T and B cell regulation, and it helps regulate the response of T cells to infections and cancer. And interesting, in Wuhan, they noticed that the pregnant women had a better prognosis and less mortality, and they measured their melatonin levels, and they all had higher melatonin. So that's an easy thing, help you get better sleep. Okay, N-acetylcysteine is being undergoing studies right now in Wuhan, and they're giving it intravenously, and that's a precursor to glutathione, which we talked about earlier. Glutathione is a master antioxidant and helps with oxidative stress and helps with liver function. And they found that in 2017, IV NAC helped decrease ICU stay. It's also used in nebulizers to help bring up the mucus. It's a mucolytic. And well, I already said it reduces oxidative stress and can help with liver function. Remember, liver failure is one of the end stage problems with the cytokine storm. Curcumin comes from turmeric. It's a known anti-inflammatory, reduces oxidative stress as well. It decreases interleukin-6 and decreases that COX-2, and it's a weaker Nrf2 activator by itself. Astragalus has long been known for its immune-stimulating activity and activity against many viruses, but I couldn't find anything directly on the coronavirus. It also decreases oxidative stress, that NF-kappa beta that is a bad guy as far as the cytokine storm, and it also increases superoxide dismutase, which is a free radical scavenger. Echinacea, I have used this for years to help people with common respiratory illnesses. It's great and active against influenza, rhinoviruses, RSV, HSV, and it does decrease over 30 cytokines, which is good, and it has shown mild activity against the SARS virus. This is something that they've been studying in China. They studied it with SARS, and they've been looking at it as a possible drug combination, glycyrrhizin, but from what I could see, it was kind of so-so. You had to have high doses, and it might not be something that's readily available, but maybe something good in the future. One of my friends said she was taking lysine, and I looked that up because it's great with the herpes viruses, but the herpes viruses is very, very, very different from the coronavirus, and there's no evidence that this would be beneficial, so I would like to spend your money on something else. And these are other known antivirals. They really have not been studied with the coronavirus, and at this point I was just exhausted and didn't really want to do any more research. But I think that I've given you a good start in navigating this wide world of nutrient supplements, and I hope that it will help you make wise decisions for you and your family members, help you be the strongest as you can be to deal with this situation. They are suggesting that maybe as things get warmer, it'll be like the flu virus and be less active. The southern hemispheres seem to be getting it more now that they are moving into winter, because this came on when they were in summer. Heat seems to kill it, and I know from patients that I've seen with an infrared sauna seems to really help, or just a regular sauna, just breathing in hot air seems to help. Okay, so guys, I want you to stay strong. Get rid of your fear and stress. They weaken the immune system. You've got to relax, slow down, enjoy time with your families. Think of all the garages that can get cleaned, all these home projects can get done. I want you to enjoy the outdoors, especially as spring comes. You know, do outdoor activities, maintain your social distancing, hand washing, and please get rid of sugar. Sugar weakens the immune system so much. I want you to read and watch, listen to uplifting music, uplifting podcasts, people who are spiritual leaders, anything you can do to maintain positivity in your brain, and stop watching the news so much. Once a day is enough if you even want to watch it that much. It is negative, and it's just very stress inducing, especially all the political crap that's going on. I'm sorry, but I just have to tune it out. And you can overcome this. You can be strong. You can get through this. We are Americans, and we will do this. All right, so if you have any questions, feel free to reach out on Facebook, Messenger. Email is probably my preferred way, and to definitely Rita's also willing to take questions. You can find us both on our YouTube channels by name, and this will be posted on our YouTube channel. So I'm going to go ahead and conclude. Thank you for listening, and I hope to hear from you if you have any questions. Thank you.